I think I've already lost you. I think you're already gone. I think I'm finally scared now. You think I'm weak, I think you're wrong. I think you're already leaving. Feels like your hand is on the door. I thought this place was an empire. Now I'm relaxed, I can't be sure. And I think you're so mean, I think we should try. I think I can need this in my life. And I think I'm scared, I think too much. I know it's wrong, it's a problem I'm feeling. If you're gone, maybe it's time to come home. There's an awful lot of breathing room, but I can hardly move. If you're gone, baby, you need to come home. Come home. There's a little bit of something me in everything in you. I bet you're hard to get over. I bet the room just won't shine. I bet my hands I can stay here. And I bet you need more than you mind. And I think you're so mean, I think we should try. I think I can need this in my life. I think I'm just scared that I know too much. I can't relate, and that's a problem I'm feeling. If you're gone, maybe it's time to come home. There's an awful lot of breathing room, but I can hardly move. If you're gone, baby, you need to come home. Come home. There's a little bit of something me in everything in you. I think you're so mean, I think we should try. I think I can need this in my life. And I think I'm scared. Do I talk too much? I know it's wrong, it's a problem I'm feeling. If you're gone, and maybe it's time to come home. Well, there's an awful lot of breathing room, but I can hardly move. If you're gone, hell, baby, you need to come home. Oh, come home. There's a little bit of something in everything in you. All it glitters is gold, and she's buying the stairway to heaven. When she gets there, she knows if the stores are all closed, with a word she can get what she came for. She's buying a stairway here. There's a sign on the wall, but she wants to be sure, 'cause you know sometimes words have two meanings. In a tree by the brook, there's a songbird who sings. Sometimes all of our thoughts are misgiven. There's a feeling I get when I look to the west, and my spirit is crying for leaving. In my thoughts I have seen rings of smoke through the trees, and the voices of those who stand looking. Soon, if we all call the tune, then the piper will lead us to reason, and a new day will dawn for those who stand long, and the forests will echo with laughter.
Morning. I hesitate to put good before morning today, but morning. When all this was beginning, many of you noted that there's a place without words. This is correct. As we were wrestling with the news of Jason's death, we were thrown into a place without words. It's a bizarre experience because words are all we have. We are words. That is what we are, a collection of words that we have saved and stored throughout our days and years. However, to contain, to heal, to continue to survive, you have to go find the new words. And that is what I have been doing the last couple of months. Searching for the words, trying them on, holding on to some and discarding others. When you have collected enough, you can form a sentence, and then a paragraph, and then a story. The story is what you own. Nothing else. The story. There are two words one can use anytime, anywhere. Thank you. And so let me begin this morning with a very deep and heartfelt thank you. The graces and the kindness that you have showered on us with the meals, cards, visits, calls, have made it easier to walk this path and have helped to lift us up when we have fallen. Grace and kindness are helping us navigate this storm. Thank you are words I can use. Thank you. Jason gave me a word that has been guiding me these last 6 weeks. The word is unshackled. I'm still trying to live up and into it. I'm not there yet, but I'll get there. Lauren and I are going to share some of our thoughts, some of his poems, our stories, and some of our reflections. Afterwards, we invite you to share with us your stories at the reception. But what we really want you to do is email your stories to us, because we're afraid we're going to lose a lot of them. And so there's a contact information that's right in the basket back there with our emails. And so if you would just send it to us, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. So Lauren's going to come and share some of her thoughts.
So, despite coming from the same parents, with the same DNA, the same childhood experiences, growing up together in that pew right there, every Sunday laughing hysterically while our dad was trying to give his very serious sermons, we grew up two totally different people in so many different ways. And those differences pulled us apart at times, and at other times, they really started to draw us together. And as we got older, those differences became even wider and grander, and we became two horribly different people. And we would comment on it with each other. We talked about it. Jason would always tell me, my friend met you and they couldn't believe how different you were from me. And we would laugh about it, and then we would continue our conversation about how different we were, considering where we came from. But what was true was that as different as we were, a little bit of Jason lived deeply in me. And a little bit of me lived deeply in Jason. So no matter what, we always understood each other. We always connected so deeply. My favorite conversations were always the ones that started with, I can't say this to anybody else but you because nobody else will ever understand what I'm about to say. And then some horribly un-PC thing would come flying out of our mouths. And that is how our relationship grew, and it developed all throughout the years. We were terribly different, but almost exactly the same. We talked about everything. We talked about our philosophies, our perspectives, our parents. We talked about our triumphs and our troubles. We talked every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. And then one day, all of those conversations just stopped. And it went quiet. And a hole just ripped me apart inside. And I wanted nothing more than to hear from him. So as we were going through his apartment in Louisville, I searched and searched because I knew he had written a lot. And he did. He wrote words and paragraphs and poems and refrains. He wrote them down with his hand. He wrote pages and pages and pages in his computer. And I took all of them looking for a message. And as I read through all of his words, I breathed everyone in, every paragraph, every poem, and my heart started beating harder and stronger and faster, and I realized that my heart beats now for both of us. And that now it's my job to carry him on my inside, outside, and what remains of me. His words brought me peace in my pain. They brought me serenity in my chaos. And they brought me a perspective from him that I needed most right now. And we're all here in pain, in confusion, and in sorrow. That when I read this poem that he left us, that it will help bring you that peace and that serenity and that understanding that he already had long before this happened. And that you too can carry him on your insides, outside, in what remains of you. I traversed to the medium to die in humidity, to sweat the life from myself. When I will myself to death, know only that it was willed. My heart pumps now more because I prefer the forest. And the forest cannot exist in the pseudo-life. Earthly endeavors are voids within rest. And it is in my sleeping state that I found her. Jesus and the whole Trinity reside in the forest. The great cats and the bears and the foxes and the wolves find solitude and safety in the trees. Carbon and oxygen coexist here. It is a grand place that I spent my empty years searching for. And now I have found it, to frolic nakedly with my anima amongst the natural world, the otherworldly, to sleep in the cloak of the heavens, to escape the transgressions of the pseudo-life. I mate with much solidity and sterility. In the forest, I am whole, incapable of violence and sin. I am a good man here. If you find yourself at my funeral, then mournful sorrows will have no seat reserved. Instead, I mourn your absence in the here. I wish you were here. Upon your readiness and dependent on your will, meet me at the forest's edge. I will carry you. I will carry you. And until then, I will carry you. I love you, man.
Some of you have asked me, how can you do this service for Jason? I think the proper question is, how can you not do this service for Jason? Some have asked me if doing this service would be hard. Yes, there's no denying it nor escaping it. It is hard. It is painful. And yet, I believe Jason would expect me to do this. He would critique it to no end, spend hours correcting the grammatical mistakes, but in the end, he would probably say, this is your task, your life. All your life, you have been preparing for this moment. It is here. Get it done. Jason was edgy. As I started writing and reflecting on this, my first instinct was to smooth out some of those sharp edges and some really rough spots. Then I found myself saying, but you loved him because he was edgy. Leo Tolstoy said, when you love somebody, you love the person as they are, not as you would like them to be. I loved him edgy. And when he matured and was no longer correctable, he became uncensored as well. If I give you an unedgy Jason, you're going to go out wondering who this service was about. He wanted his truths without disguise, without being cleaned up, without being softened or sanitized. He might not like a particular truth, but he would admit that was truthful. And if it was truthful and transparent, he was okay. It was when you tried to hide things that he would get upset, and throughout his life, He searched for and wrestled with many, many truths. When he was young, I thought I would get him a Bible storybook and read stories to him like my mother had done with me. I even found the exact same Bible storybook my mother used and bought it and took it home to share it with him. Both Lauren and he both hated it, Jason especially. King James Version with sanitized Bible stories. He just wasn't having it. We were at a bookstore once, and I asked him if he was interested in picking his own Bible story books. He said yes. We went over to browse the children's Bible storybook section, and I pulled a book off the shelf, and I asked, what story would you like to see? And he said, I want to see the story of David and Goliath. So I opened it up, and he looked at the picture, and he examined David with his sling. Nope, I don't want that one. Next one, got the next Bible storybook out, opened it, David gathering pebbles from a creek. Nope, I don't want that one either. Next one showed the two warriors yelling at one another. Nope, not that one. Finally, about the fourth or fifth book, I pulled out one and I opened it up, and there was a picture of David holding Goliath's head in his hand with blood dripping down. That's it, Dad. That's the book I want. I thought, you might have a problem here, John. Kierkegaard said, we live forward, but we understand backward. A couple of things in that story that emerged throughout his life that now we can see clearly as we look backward. Jason often felt that he was in a David and Goliath contest in every sport, in every job. He was small of stature, and many overlooked his size. It didn't matter. I think at times he preferred it, because while you or others were overlooking him, he was figuring out how to defeat you. He was phenomenally strong and phenomenally fast, and he knew, all I have to understand is the game they're playing, and then I will win. I will win it. He was very, very competitive. He would study a sport and play a sport until he mastered it and figured out how to beat you. Jason, Dave Coons, and I would get together a couple of times a week at the Chilton Center at the racquetball court for a game of cutthroat. Yeah, he liked that name too, cutthroat. That's a revolving 2 against 1 kind of game. So one person serves, 2 play against him. Dave Coons and I were always against Jason. It was always 2 against 1. And every now and then, we would get him down. And you could see him just turn and take his game to a whole other level. And just beat us. Bam, it was done. But he didn't compete just at sports. He competed at everything. If he was taking an exam in grade school, he had to be the first person to turn in the test. It didn't have to be perfect. It had to be first on the teacher's desk. If he was working beside you, I have to finish before he does. He wouldn't tell you that he had won, but he knew I won. And what he would also do is he would help you. He would finish his, take a deep breath, and help you with yours, but he knew I won. When he was a young kid, we enrolled him in a coach pitch baseball team. The idea was that every kid would get to bat and play, and no one was keeping score, and 3 outs didn't really matter. Jason's team just ran over the other team. No one was keeping score, but it was lopsided, something like 26-2. Nobody was keeping score, but it was just bizarre. It was bizarre. But I was walking behind him and a couple of his friends as they were commenting to one another, and one turned to the other and said, I think we can count that as a victory. Jason did not get into anything to win a participation. Thank you. Trophy. Precipitation trophy. And he suffered defeats personally and badly. When he did lose, his mother and I would be in the stands and we would be debating who was going to drive him home. He wouldn't say anything. He would just sit there in a stone, cold, icy silence, analyzing every single thing that had happened. He hated defeat. Jason was raised in this church, and he enjoyed it. He especially loved the potluck dinners. He often found comic relief while I was preaching, very disconcerting. He would sit on the second row with his sister, and they would tell jokes and laugh. And I was sitting there going, focus, John, focus, focus. Stay on task, stay on task. And I think he knew it, because about the time I'd say stay on task, he would do something and, try to break my concentration. I was upset with him one time and decided to challenge him and ask him what I had preached on. Sure enough, every point of the sermon he remembered. Church was not holy ground to Jason. He was especially fond of his favorite Sunday school teacher, Evan Patterson. He was ready to go to church and to get to church when Evan was going to teach the Sunday school lesson. It took me a while to figure out this behavior. It was just the two of them. The church had lost a lot of its children, and so it was just Jason and Evan. And Jason would hurry through whatever lesson Evan was teaching, answer the questions pertaining to the lesson, and then the two of them would go play basketball in Houseman Hall. I think the lesson lasted 15 minutes, and they played basketball for the next 45. The basketball court, the racquetball court, the tennis court, the baseball and football fields, those were his holy ground. Athletics was a constant throughout his life, whether playing or watching. Jason loved to sleep late. He could sleep till noon, but he would get up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to watch the Australian Open live. That's how committed he was to professional sports, and he loved tennis. A second thing that few really ever got from Jason was that he wanted things real. He didn't want fake anything. As Lauren said, he coined the term pseudo to describe or talk about things. Pseudo meaning fake, a sham, bogus, misleading. And he could see the pseudo in everything: politics, sports, religion, church, and people. He wouldn't throw it in your face, but he wanted truth. He searched for truth. Truth could be messy, painful, bitter, but don't do anything to pseudo it. It took me a while to figure out why he wanted the head of Goliath. The contemporary church has cleaned up the image of God, and it cleaned up the image of God way too much for him. I struggle to understand and to reconcile his almost churchless faith with his deep spirituality. I could hear him living his faith in the comments of his friend, who knew that regardless of their pain and difficulty, Jason would stand beside them and more than go the extra mile. Jason and I often talked for hours about spirituality and faith and church. His favorite conversations occurred between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning. He respected your desire to go to church, but after leaving Colorado, his shadow seldom darkened the door of one. Several years ago, I shared a poem that had been given to me, and I can see Jason's spirituality in it. And he loved the poem because it expressed the God that he wanted. A couple of lines revealed Jason's faith and his image of God. The poem helps reconcile his distance from the church with his spirituality. It reveals a God he liked and loved. And I encourage you to Google the prayer because it's long. I'm just going to share a little bit of it. The poem is called Prayer by Chicano poet Francisco Alarcón. I want a God as my accomplice who spends nights in houses of ill repute and gets up late on Saturday. A God who whistles through the streets and trembles before the lips of his lover. A God who waits in line at the entrance of movie houses and likes to drink café au lait. A jobless God, a striking God, a hungry God, a fugitive God, an exiled God, an enraged God. A God who longs from jail for a change in the order of things. I want a more God-like God. He attended Loveland schools and graduated from Loveland Thompson Valley High School. In his writing, he acknowledged that school was pretty much a piece of cake for him. When something was a little harder, he would give it a little extra time, master the subject, and move on. However, he had no desire to put in an effort to be at the top of his class. He was there for friends, for basketball, and for his girlfriend. He lived for both basketball and his girlfriend. And he acknowledged that on court, he could see things before they happened. He could see things before they happened. In high school, his life also took a detour because it was in high school that he was introduced to drugs. He had to battle to find his life again, and did. And when he did, he started studying philosophy, poetry, psychology, symbolism, and he loved to sit and philosophize and to think about God, about issues of life and death. He found in the writings of Nietzsche, Jung, Bukowski, Hunter Thompson, answers he had been searching for. As a kid, maybe 4 or 5, I would read him a story at night of some book that he had picked out, and when I got to the end, he would say, "Dad, I have a question." I was expecting something about what I had just read. I learned quickly that he had listened to the story but had other things on his mind. "Dad, if I die, will my toys be in heaven?" One night after pizza, "Dad, will there be pizza in heaven?" When he matured and the issues of life and death became more dominant, and in his poetry, you can hear him frustrated with the lies that surrounded him. He coined that term in philosophy class, this pseudo-life. He would talk about dying young, which none of us wanted to hear. But he knew something. He saw something. And he kept it close and he kept it secret. He knew he was not here for the long run. His poems and his poetry and his writing is filled with the symbols of just beyond what he called the forest. He wanted the forest. He was a dog whisperer, and he called himself a dog whisperer. Every dog he ever met, whether yours, a street dog on the street in Mexico, or the neighbor's dog at a dog park, he loved. And in the last couple of years, he started enjoying the company of cats. His dogs Shelby and JD provided him with hours of companionship. And he arranged his schedules, both at work and when he was out with friends, to ensure that he would get home to check on his dogs and make sure they were okay. In one of the pictures that you saw a parrot taking a cracker out of his mouth. His T-shirt says, "I like animals more than people." And that was often true. When he was about 2, a chicken took after him at some farm or petting zoo. And he blamed his mother for taking him to that and for letting that chicken take after him. Anyway, birds completely freaked him out and scared him. We were out in California one time on the pier, and I was walking along, not paying much attention, and he was ducking the seagulls coming in to try to find food, and they were freaking him out. I told him one time, watch Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. He came back and he said that was the scariest horror movie he had ever seen. In his writings, he wrote about the wolf, who was his spirit animal. Wolves are a highly misunderstood animal. In reality, wolves are friendly and social creatures with a strong sense of family. Wolves represent the spirit of freedom. An insight from William Sloane Coffin, the great Riverside preacher, who also had to lead a service for his son. He noted that when parents die, they took a lot of the past with them. But when a child died, they took a lot of the future with them. This is one I will be reconciling for a long time. Jason had all the gifts, both positive gifts and the negative gifts. He was handsome, and I watched him melt people with his smile and humor, beyond intelligent, and with a memory that would neither quit or forget. I don't know how many times he said to me, "Dad, you already told me that." Athletic and competitive, and he was almost grammatically perfect. I would write the visitor articles that would be published in our monthly newsletter, and I would have Pam correct them. One time she was unavailable, and I needed to get this article written and done. So I asked Jason to look it over. Big mistake. It came back marked. No, he didn't do a pencil. He got a great big red thing and just tore it to pieces. Corrected, rewritten, ideas that I thought were important, completely eliminated. In Louisville, I was talking to him one time, and he said, "I'm a grammar Nazi." And I said, "What is that?" He said, "I correct my friends when they use bad grammar, even their text." And they like that? No, they usually send some back some select emoji. But I love catching them. Creative. I gave him a plot to a book I was thinking about writing the next morning, and he called. I have it figured out. I wrote 4 pages on a legal pad last night of things that you can do with a plot. You need to make this person this, and this person gay, and you need to do this with this person, and you need... I was stunned. He had sat up at night for 2 hours and had completely just gone crazy on that plot. The strength of these gifts pushed him to the forefront, but he had zero desire to lead. Zero. And these gifts covered the gift that he was missing. Discipline. He was missing the gift of discipline. He had the gifts of a storyteller, a gifted teaser and leg puller. He could spin some yarn out of thin air and lead you down some unbelievable plot line and lead and lead and lead until you said, "Really?" And then you would see that smile break out over his face because he knew, I have you. I have you. Pam was one of his favorite targets. She asked me once, "Why don't you do that?" And I said, "I learned real quick, don't believe anything he's telling you until you can document it." She met with one of his middle school teachers who said to Pam, I didn't know your husband was Colombian. What? Yeah, your son wrote about him in a family outline. My husband is from Kansas. Evidently, the assignment was to write something about your family, and Jason decided I was too boring. I did like the character he had created, but had he been given more time, I would have probably ended up as the cousin of Pablo Escobar. He loved sports, all kinds of sports, except for soccer. But he followed them all the time, and he loved movies, and he followed Friends and The Office, and he could tell you what was going to happen in any episode. I think Friends was on something like 15, 16 years, and he knew every single episode. He had it playing in the background. But one of the gifts or curses, depending on how Jason was feeling at the time, was an empathetic, gentle, and sensitive heart. He could feel the pain and suffering of others acutely and took measures to protect himself. He wore an angry face to get kind of a get out of my way expression. However, those who knew him knew it was his mask, protection in a cruel world. Inside, he was suffering. On a mission trip to Mexico, I sent him to a remote village where he encountered poverty up close. He had never seen kids who had never brushed their teeth. He saw the raw edge of poverty, and it bothered him. The picture you saw of him brushing a young girl's teeth was one of the most disturbing moments of his teenage years. He noted this, but he also noted that sitting next to him was a teenage goddess who was accompanying her mom. He could swing widely from empathy to entertainment. He was bothered when friends brought their problems to him. Why do they keep asking me? I told him they see something in you. What do they see? I said. Compassion. He was a wise soul beyond his years. I said to him one time, try helping or giving them something they can use, and see how you feel. A few days later, we were talking, and he was talking about giving some advice and companionship that he had offered a friend. I asked, well, how did it make you feel? Felt pretty good, really. He could see how things were going to play out, not just on the basketball court, but in the lives of his friends. And he started using a line as they were headed towards crisis and towards all sorts of losses. Pump the brakes. Let's pump the brakes. Let's slow down. Let's take a deep breath. And he would let them talk it out until they were okay. All of his friends said he would give you the shirt off his back. We have kind of an inside family joke about giving you the shirt off his back. He was hairy. Oh, he was just hairy. When we entered his apartment and started going through his things, we must have found 6 barber clippers. Yes, he would give you the shirt off his back willingly, but then he would ask you to shave it. Jason was a complicated individual, and probably the most complicated individual I have ever known. When I mentioned his complexity at his Louisville service, everyone in the audience said, uh-huh. Everyone is complicated. But he took complexity to a whole different level. You never really knew where he was coming from or where he was going. Jason was spiritual and secular, profound and profane. He was raised in the church and he left the church. But when he left it, he took the spirit out of it, and he left the religion inside the four walls. It was pseudo to him. If you study the prophets, and he did, both the biblical and contemporary artists and social critics, yes, they are frequently prophetic. You see a fine intermingling of sacred and profane. And who were his prophets and artists? Some were biblical and others modern and very secular. The philosophers who dwell in the deeper layers of life. Bukowski, Nietzsche, Hume, Aristotle, Camus, Daphne du Maurier. From her, he copied and texted this line to me: "But luxury has never appealed to me. I like simple things, books, being alone, or with somebody who understands." These were the artists who helped him to be free. Bukowski was probably Jason's favorite poet. Bukowski said, "The free soul is rare. The free soul is rare, but you know it when you see it because you feel good, very good, when you are near or with it." Jason was a free soul, a rare soul, and determined to live life on his own terms. He wasn't interested in the things you and I believe are important. But there was one thing he needed to live his life, and that was freedom. And now he is free. And that is the meaning of the last word he gave me. Unshackled. I'm unshackled. Shall we pray? If you are wondering, God, if this is still raw, it is. I have not healed. And I think you know it. Thank you. I wanted so much more time with him. But thank you for the 33 years you gave me. I am greater because he pushed me. He added to my life. He sharpened me as I sharpened him. I'm waiting for that peace that transcends understanding. I am waiting to hear from him again. Amen. From Saint Cyprian, these words: "We should not weep for those we love whom the Lord has called and set free from life on earth. We have been assured that they have not just gone, but have gone forward. They have left us to lead the way. We should wish them Godspeed rather than weep for them. We should not wear black clothes here when they have already put on a white robe in heaven. We do not mourn for them because they are alive with God. Godspeed, Jason. Godspeed.
Feeling